Welcome, everybody. It is the Too High Podcast. I am Seth Galina alongside Diante Lee. And today, Mr. Trevor Sikkema, PFF Trevor.
Hello?
What's going on?
That's not my Twitter handle, but I'm not a company man.
That's
like you.
Yeah.
I'm not as committed as you guys are.
I'm committed to unsullying the PFF name at the Combine. Been called a fraud way too much this week.
No, you never. No, I'm very happy to be on the podcast. I obviously listen to you guys all the time. I'm hoping that I get a vintage Seth ad read live. I'm hoping I get one of those, but who knows? I guess we'll see. But
we'll see about
glad to be on the podcast, man.
Yeah, glad to be talking to you, Trev. Obviously, I've spoken with you about this before, but following your work at all the places you've been at before now and DMing you about draft prospects, talking to some of our colleagues that we share with one another. So I am glad to have you on so we can finally talk draft in person, man. It's been great meeting you and everybody else in the company.
Yeah.
It's been a long week, but it's been a good one.
No, it's been, like I said, I feel like I listen to you guys' voices all the time, so it's like I hang out with you guys every week.
When you close your eyes, that's all you hear.
I do.
All you see is my face.
I just turn you guys' podcast on when I go to bed, so it's like, I'm dreaming about it, I'm doing, that's my thing.
Yeah, that's weird, but whatever. What?
No, it puts me to sleep.
Oh, yeah, right, of course.
There we go.
Well, I said we were the ASMR podcast of the PFF network, so. Okay, first of all, let's start with what will hopefully be the worst team in the NFC South next year.
Oh, come on. Don't do this to me.
What can the Bucs do? And really just at quarterback.
Okay.
What can the Bucs do at quarterback? Let's go to high and low end here.
Yes.
What can they do realistically at quarterback to get them back into the playoffs? I'm not saying Super Bowl contender, I'm saying back into the playoffs.
Right.
And then the other thing is what is the fantasy situation that gets them to the Super Bowl?
Right. Well, I think if they blackmail Tom Brady and his family enough, then he still might be able to get him back.
That's the realistic
one. That's not the fantasy. No, when you look at the quarterback situation there, it's interesting what they have right now. And by interesting, I mean not great, because it's Blaine Gabbert, and I don't think that Blaine Gabbert has obviously been very good in the NFL, former number 1 overall guy. And it's like, okay, he has some talent, but if he was really a starting quarterback, he would have become a starting quarterback. Right. So
Blaine Gabbert, I believe, for a quarterback who has minimum 500 dropbacks, 750 dropbacks, I'm pretty sure is the worst PFF grade in PFF history.
Well, I didn't know that, but it checks out.
Yeah, it checks out. The eye test matches in this case.
So I think that obviously, if you're buying into him, it doesn't give the fan base and people a big reason to be okay, yeah, they'll be back in the playoffs. And then on the flip side, it's Trask. It's Kyle Trask from Florida. And I know there are a lot of people who looked at what Trask did when he had Kyle Pitts and when he had Kadarius Toney, when they were passing the ball a lot the previous year at Florida. And obviously he did a lot of great things in college, but I was super skeptical of Kyle Trask's arm strength, his velocity, and his ability to just be an NFL quarterback when it came to fitting the football in a football-sized window, if you will, being aggressive. And that was just never really Trask's thing in college football, and I was super shocked that they even picked Trask, because to me, he's not a Bruce Arians quarterback at all. So that's also something where it's they'll just throw Trask in there. I'm I don't even know if Trask can be ready for an Arians offense. Right. So their current situation's a little bit sketchy. I'm sure they would love to go get a veteran quarterback somewhere else. If Russell Wilson was available, if Kyler Murray was available, something like that. I think that they would be obviously Aaron Rodgers, but it didn't seem like we talked to Bruce Arians here at the Combine, and he was just doesn't seem like any of the veteran quarterbacks are moving. And I feel like the Bucs were going to be one of those teams that would have been the most aggressive.
Right.
So if something was budging somewhere, they would have been in the mix, and he probably wouldn't have said it the way he did. So I don't know. It just seems like probably the most realistic spot is them rolling with one of the guys they have now, which division's not great, but that's also not great for the Buccaneers.
Do you see them taking a quarterback?
No.
Early, I guess.
Early. I mean, late, whatever. But
so they pick, I think it's 24, and I don't really know what quarterbacks are going to be available at 24, but
shoot, who knows?
If you're not taking Malik, I don't really know why any of them would be.
Are you Malik QB1?
I think Malik's going to have to be QB1, right? And it's we're seeing a lot of things.
We're spreading it.
I know. And with Malik Willis, there's so much of his tape that tells me he is not ready. But there's so much of what I have seen.
There's a lot of his tape
right,
that tells you he's not ready.
There's a lot of what I have seen since the season ended that tells me the NFL's probably not going to care.
Right.
And they're
That's
going to
exactly
take him early.
Right.
I hope he goes to a spot like Atlanta, like the Minnesota Vikings, maybe even the Detroit Lions if they kind of like
where you
roll
can
with
just
Goff
chill
for a year and not
yeah.
really press him. But like if he goes to Washington Commanders or if he goes to Carolina Panthers,
Yeah, that's
gonna
rough.
be rough.
Good,
That's
man.
rough.
that's
not
going to be
good.
right. You see Malik Willis out there in Week 5 starting in the NFL, and if you take the Liberty version of Malik Willis that we saw last year and you put that on the Carolina Panthers, like you're screwed. You're not winning a lot of football games.
Right.
I think Malik's got a high ceiling, but all of that to say, I don't think they're going to be in the running for the guy that would have the highest ceiling or the most allurement. So then at that point, they're probably not going to pressure themselves to take a quarterback at all, especially at 24. So
Well, then I guess the next question is just like, are they just in BPA mode for pick 24 or?
I think they are going to be. I think that they're going to get a deal done with Chris Godwin. I know a lot of fan bases around the NFL hope that Chris Godwin goes.
Yes,
to
we
their
would
team.
all like that. with Chris Godwin.
It would be silly of them to let him go. It's so
Right.
hard to find a wide receiver that can do what he does in particular,
Unbelievable.
and the fit for what he does with Bruce Arians in particular.
Perfect.
Yes.
You couldn't build a better receiver for that. So yeah, I'd be shocked if he didn't get the deal done immediately.
Him as an intermediate receiver and then him as a blocker.
That-
it's
well,
just
that's the thing.
how
right?
they use him so well. And so I think that he's back. I think they get a deal done with him, and then I think they use a franchise tag on Carlton Davis. So I don't think they lose those guys. So that to say, I do think they go best player available. I really do think they'll give themselves that flexibility. Although, man, with Ali Marpet retiring, they might lose Jensen.
Right.
They might lose
That
Kappa.
changes
Now
things.
Marpet's already gone. So it's
Right.
like, I think it's a little bit of BPA, but they're honing in
getting
on
on
offensive
Well,
line
I'll
as
tell
a
you
big-
what, Zion Johnson right behind us just repped out 32 on the bench press.
That was Zion?
Yeah.
I thought it was you.
Well,
No? I wasn't over there, but I just heard them
Yeah.
say 32, and I was like, oh, that's Seth.
no, I did 33.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Is Seth getting 225 off the rack?
No, he is not. No, he is not.
can you get it? Yeah, can you offload it? Can you not even bring it down to rep it? Can you just offload 225?
Can I look at a bar with 225 on it and not
Seth's
collapse?
just sweating being in the same presence of two plates being on the same bar.
And the answer is no. Would guard tackle? The tackle class is interesting because it seems like we might have like 4 now in the top 15.
Shoot.
And then it's like, okay, well now all of a sudden that changes things.
I mean, shit, we might have 3 that could be in the conversation for being 1 overall.
100%, right?
Yeah, I think we might get 3 in the top 6.
Yeah.
I think that Carolina is probably a floor for probably the third guy. I think Icky and Evan Neal are going right before him, or it's going to be some order of those guys. But then you've got like Darian Kennard, Trevor Penning, Bernard Raymond, like
Right.
all of these guys that could go in the mix probably in the back half of the first round. So to answer your question, yeah, I think that tackle would be an option. Obviously, they have Donovan Smith and they have Tristan Wirfs, but you get a guy who has that versatility. Like if they pick Darian Kennard, right? If Darian Kennard's available at 24 and they pick him, that might be best case scenario because I do think he can play guard,
Right.
but I believe he can play tackle. I think he's got some pretty good tackle tape too. So, if you ever move on from Donovan Smith or something like
Right.
that, you've got a guy that you might be able to move over. So I think those guys would be in the mix too.
At guard, in that 20 to 30 range, like you said, Kennard could be someone there. Zion
Right.
Johnson we just talked about.
Yeah.
Kenyon Green from Texas A&M.
Right.
Any of those 3, or in that maybe, I guess it's like the tier 1 group of guards.
Yeah.
Do you have a guy there that you're into?
Yeah, I think.
Who do you like?
So, I think Tyler Linderbaum is going to be by far my top
Yeah, of
tier
course.
offensive line.
Hold on,
course.
let me rewind for a second and ask you. I find the Linderbaum question kind of one of the more interesting ones because he at the center, there's no one even close to him at that position.
Right, I agree.
But then it's like, okay, but then so he's like a top 5 talent per se, playing a not so valuable position.
Right.
Where are you like in a free yourself from the shackles of any context.
Right. Of value.
Like where?
Tell Eric here to plug his ears real quick while listening to the pod.
Yeah. Where do you see a player like that?
So it's interesting because I've read a lot of mock drafts that'll have Tyler Linderbaum going somewhere in the 20s. Like I've seen him to Dallas at 24, and I've seen him going to the Eagles at like 19 or something like that as a Jason Kelsey replacement. So I think that all of those are target areas for him. But I keep coming back to the fact that we talk about this class as not the strongest class in the world, and there's a lot up in the air. And I keep saying to myself, man, Linderbaum is just a damn good football player.
Right.
So like, draft him a little bit earlier, just like go get the guy that you know is going to be good. And I think that we're going to see a little bit more of a premium on guys in this class for that reason. So I say that certainly there are guys in the back half of the draft or in the first round that would love to get Tyler Linderbaum. But like if I'm maybe even Atlanta at 8, like I'm thinking about him there.
Right.
I think there's a lot of teams that are picking up at the top where whether it's you need a center or an interior offensive lineman, pick this dude. You know you're going to be happy with it. And so, I think that if he's on the board in that kind of category for a lot of teams, I think they should take the bait on it because he's a good football player.
I think he's a really good football player.
I'll say there's nothing to debate about that.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that we saw, with the team like Kansas City, I mean, going up and getting Creed Humphrey,
huge,
it's enormous.
Everything.
I mean, and you hear with where the league is going, first of all, with all the wide zone, the duo runs and things like that.
So good.
We hear press conference after press conference with these head coaches and offensive coordinators talking about how important the center has been to the offense. And for, in situations where you might have some turnover at quarterback, getting a guy who can come in that you can start building this chemistry with, that is going to be skilled, that can handle a lot, mentally and physically. Again, there's really no debate about the value that he has just as an offensive lineman. If you can kind of divorce yourself from how you feel about where center should be drafted, where interior offensive linemen should be drafted. If you're just looking at Linderbaum as a prospect and you're a team, on the back half of the draft where it's like surplus value is really what you're looking for at offensive line, there's no question. If that ends up being one of the guys who's at the top of the list as far as players available, nobody should be begrudging you if you decide to go ahead and snag a guy like that.
And I think that people talk about interior offensive line as being less valuable because you get help, right? In the middle, it's more in a phone booth, it's more close quarters.
The center doesn't get a lot of one-on-ones that he has to win. He's always helped with like in pass pro or something.
It's not like tackles. Obviously, they've got the outside shoulder exposed. You've got to be able to handle that. A lot of times you're one-on-one against edge rushers. So handling things like that's important. Like, we talk about the same thing for corner. If you can play one-on-one, you've got that value. Wide receiver, if you can win one-on-one, you've got that value. So I feel like that's a big reason why people talk about that interior offensive line spot is you get help. But at the same time, what you were talking about, with the NFL going a lot more towards getting these guys in space no matter what, all of a sudden you have to start covering a lot more ground, and sometimes you're not going to get as much help as you think because you're on the move. And I think that Tyler Linderbaum gets himself in those one-on-one situations a lot when he's on the move. So that value, I think, still shows up for him.
100%.
I mean, and I'll add, just to sound like a smart guy here, but like, hey, NFL, go to more two high defenses, which means interior offensive linemen and defensive linemen become more important.
Right.
Because that is where you're going to start, we're going to go back to winning and losing football games is there. Maybe not quite there yet, but I think at some point we are going to get there.
We're heading in that direction.
We're heading in that direction, and Linderbaum is that. He really is that good. He really doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He's super quick with some strength.
He's got the wrestling background, which I love for offensive linemen anytime that's the case.
100%.
Okay, so go back to the question of the tier 1 guards. Like if we're the Buccaneers, I mean, to me, like I like the two that I like the best are like Kenyon Green from Texas A&M and Zion Johnson from Boston College, but two kind of different players.
Yeah, totally.
Power, like we just said, Zion Johnson. 32 reps, didn't quite get to my record, but 32 reps on the bench press versus Kenyon Green, who's played a bunch of different positions.
Yeah.
More of a quicker, more agile lineman. If you're the Bucs, what does that make? Where does that go?
I think they like to run a lot more power stuff, so I think that Zion Johnson's a little bit better. And I think, look, the identity might change a little bit with those three guys in the middle being gone because they like to run so much power stuff and double blocks in the middle because they had Marpet and Jensen and Kappa, and that was kind of their identity. Donovan Smith, he's a little bit lighter on his feet. We know how well Tristan Wirfs can move, so maybe they go in a little bit different of a direction.
Guys got so lucky taking
with Tristan Wirfs. Unbelievable, dude. As like he was the 4th offensive tackle taken in that class.
And steps in and is like, I'm just a top 5 tackle in the league.
Unbelievable. He's nuts, man. And he's perfectly built to play right tackle, and just obviously we've seen the benefits of that. But I would probably tell you that if they want to stick along the same lines, which is the same coaching staff, it's still Bruce Arians, it's still Byron Leftwich right now, they'll probably go more towards that. But also, not only are they losing their interior offensive linemen, they're probably going to have all new running backs too. Leonard Fournette's probably gone. Ronald Jones is probably gone. So the Bucs really are going to have a complete empty canvas for what they want their running back to be. So for the first time, they might have the chance to be like, all right, well,
make some philosophical
we do want to have
we go like more zone and just do it like that. That's interesting. Well, I don't know if you know this.
Yes.
Trevor.
Yes.
Right now, you can get 25% off any PFF subscription if you use the promo code TOOHIGH on PFF.com. That's TWOHIGH. What can you get with a PFF subscription? You get access to Diante's writing, to Seth Galina's writing, and to Trevor Sikkema's writing. You get the NFL Draft Guide. You get the completely unlocked mock draft simulator, 2022 free agency rankings, data and grades from the entire 2021 season, and much more. Support the pod and use promo code TOOHIGH for 25% off any subscription. All right, I want to talk about the receiver class. I think it's a fascinating receiver class. Let's start with what happened last night. 40 times coming out. Me and Diante were sitting next to each other when Chris Olave supposedly
allegedly
ran a 4.26.
Yeah.
And we were just like, all right, well, that's the best receiver that's ever lived. Like, if you like that tape plus 4.26 is the best receiver that's ever lived.
Right.
Were you in that same for those few hours before the official number, which was 4.39?
Yeah,
4.39 is the
which
official.
Which is still fucking fast as hell. I am certainly not running a 4.39.
Right.
What were those like few hours like in your head? How you kind of rejiggered your opinion on the receivers?
Yeah, it was a wonderful time. It was, it was happiness, it was blissfulness, and there were 12 wide receivers that all ran unofficial 40 times of 4.39 or faster, including Tyquan Thornton, who broke the record, who would have broken the record with his unofficial time.
And now he just got to settle with being a sub 4, just a regular old sub 4.3 guy.
Which is fine, but it was wild because from 2015 to 2018, we had 10 total wide receivers who ran faster than 4.39, and in one night we had 12 unofficial. So there was reason to freak out about it because we were talking about an unprecedented group of speed players going to the NFL. And you talked about how interesting this wide receiver class is, and you guys know this. Diante, I know because you coach high school ball hands-on as well, but it's like we're going to get so many good wide receiver classes just for forever because that's what high school football is doing. That's what college football is doing. And so
7-on-7 has proliferated every level of football, basically.
And knowing that and then seeing the speed times and being like, holy cow, the game's about to get that much faster. That was pretty crazy. Obviously, the official numbers were a little bit slower. We didn't have a record breaker. Chris Olave wasn't in the 4.2s, but still, I do think there's a lot of speed in this group. There were a lot of guys that performed really well. I was super pumped to see George Pickens running the 4.7 for 4.4. So he had 4.47. This is official.
Major for him.
That was great.
If he doesn't have the injury,
he's good.
He's in
the tier 1 group.
He's probably like 1 or 2.
He's in that group, which I guess we'll talk about. But his tape is ludicrous.
Yes,
it's fantastic.
He is such a X receiver kind of bully with his strength.
Yes.
Oh my God.
Yes.
And then he also showed that he could run really well, which just I do think I'm totally with you. The fact that he was able to compete and succeed right away in the SEC as a freshman and sophomore before the injury, and then having the testing numbers that he has, he's got the size, he's got the strength, he's got the speed, man. This is a prototypical wide receiver one in the NFL.
100%.
And not sure if he's going to pan out that way, but George Pickens gives you everything you want to be that tier 1 kind of a wide receiver.
I mean, and the thing for Pickens in me that I was kind of most gratified about is that he was justified in his timeline in recovery. Right? While everybody was kind of wondering what he was going to look like when he came back, whether or not he could really contribute, it was kind of spotty for a little bit. He gets a big catch in the SEC title game, and then it seemed like he kind of fizzled away. But you can tell that by being patient in this recovery process, making sure his body is all the way right, and then in a position like this where eyeballs are on him, and he comes up to the podium and says, it's a big deal for me to try to get sub 4.5 and show you guys that I can really move again. I think that was major for him. And, when you add that with the tape, even though it is a little bit limited, I guess, over the last 2 seasons or so, we've got a pretty good look at a guy who might be a wide receiver 1, even if he's not drafted in that position. The question I had for you, Trevor, is for the guys who did not test, or even the guys who had like major deltas in what we thought unofficially versus officially, who do you think maybe has the most to prove leaving here and going to the pro day circuit?
Well, Drake London's a big one, right? Wide receiver from USC. He's my wide receiver 1 in this draft class. The big question with him is speed, right? Mm-hmm. And he said when he was at his podium, he's about 85% after that ankle injury, recovering from that ankle injury. He's probably a little bit closer to 100% than that.
And maybe just not at the time that he wants
yet. Right. He's probably still training, which, hey, good for him.
And I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that.
It's not 85% of the injury recovery. It's 85% of the time.
Right, the 40 times that I want.
So I think that's going to be huge. I've seen some people say that he's going to run like high 4.6s, maybe even like 4.7 flat. And I'm like, I do not
I don't
see
see
that.
that.
I don't
I don't
think he's
see that.
near that slow at all. Like, even if you want to say that he's not the best separator, he's not the best guy getting vertical, like, he's going to run faster than that. I think he is a 4.5s guy. I think he's going to be somewhere in the mid 4.5s.
Dude, if it's 4.5s.
Right. And I think that a little home cooking at USC, the little stopwatch might be something a little bit 4.48. We might see one of those get floated around. So I think he's going to be totally fine there. He was a little bit smaller than we thought for the measurements because USC had him listed at 6'5". He came in just under 6'4", but I think what was important is he was 220.
Right.
He came
right.
in at
Big
220.
boy.
I was worried that he was going to come in at like
Light
210,
as well,
and I was like,
shorter
okay.
and lighter,
right?
And we're not sure about speed. Yeah.
That's all of a sudden a little bit of a worry. But if he stays right around 220, he can run really well. I think that that's good. I mean, but we've got to talk about Treylon Burks.
I was going to say Treylon Burks is a name,
and it's not even that Treylon Burks' time of his 40 was that bad. He ran a 4.4 or a 4.55 official, and like for a guy who's 6'3", 225 pounds, that's fine, right?
Exactly.
Like, that's good.
Exactly.
And so it was just the fact that we were told that Treylon Burks was going to threaten 4.3, or that like he was just going to have like insane agility drills too. Because I think he tested and like he was higher than 4.7, or so he was higher than 7 seconds in the 3-cone.
Yeah,
and I think I saw that his percentile was like the 22nd percentile.
Yeah,
something like that.
All of a sudden, it was this. Danny Kelly from The Ringer, he does a great job like using different kinds of comps to be very creative with guys. He called Treylon Burks before the combine a Mario Mushroom version of Deebo Samuel, just like a bigger guy that you can use in the backfield and the slot on the outside. And he didn't test as well as I think a lot of people wanted him to.
Right.
And so I feel like it feels weird to say stock down on him because, like we just said, the times are fine for his size. But it is weird having that expectation of Treylon Burks and then coming away a little disappointed.
I think with him, it's like because the tape isn't too telling when you're looking at what does a real like wide receiver do.
Right,
you know
within
what I mean?
like
Like
within the context of the Arkansas offense and all of that.
Yeah, because like he's playing a lot of different positions. When he's out, wide, it's not a lot of like craftiness, and he's not a route technician. So you're like, okay, well, if you're gonna be big and fast, let me see the numbers that show that you're big and fast.
Right.
So I get that it's like, okay, well, maybe not. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, but from what from just talking to you right now, when you look at wide receivers, are you more into these more X-type receivers? Is that like when you take them to the film, like, and like you can be wrong 1,000 times, and it does
which I am,
which you are, which we all are, like, and you're like every time you put up, you look at George Pickens and you're like, that's the X,
right.
He gets off press, he understands how to use his hands, all that stuff. Is that the type of receiver you're looking for? And then, like you said, Drake London wide receiver run like me. Is that the type of receiver you're looking for?
I think I'm a little bit of a sucker for them at the top of rankings, and I fully understand that a wide receiver one in an offense can come in all different shapes and sizes, right? Good head coaches and good offense coordinators will be able to use guys, and not even just use guys, but even guys who specialize in a certain skill set. They will be able to get the most out of them. So you can succeed at the NFL with a variety of different wide receivers. We're definitely seeing that. But when it comes to building my rankings, I came into the combine with Drake London as my 1, George Pickens as my 2, Treylon Burks
number 2.
Yeah, he was my 2 coming into the week. And
I like it.
I got the receipts, so I'm not lying about it. And then I had Treylon Burks at 3.
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like
those guys are the size profile guys that give you the
Yeah.
ability to play the X, to play on the line of scrimmage, to go up against CB1s, to beat press coverage, to do all that kinds of stuff. And that definitely does influence where I have these guys in the tier.
It also just allows you, the X receiver allows you kind of to unlock, if you can win, if it's not in Kill Harry, like if you can win, then it allows you to unlock the whole field for everybody else, right? We talk about this all the time now. We talked about with the Super Bowl, with where Ramsey was going to play and stuff, and how they were able to, if you can win your one-on-ones on like the backside, in an isolated situation, then that safety has to stay to the backside. Really,
he's got to roll something over the top. It changes the math for you. Aside from like those X receiver types that we kind of talked about that you have at the top of your rankings, was there anybody who stuck out to you, good or bad, as far as how they performed, whether it's on the podium or on the field?
I mean, Christian Watkins might be a first-round pick now.
Dude,
Wide
that's
receiver
crazy.
at Florida State.
I'm 100% going to have to spend like a full day watching him after what happened while we were here.
I mean, I haven't seen a ton of tape on him. I think I watched the 2 or 3 games that I had with my preliminary rankings and everything, and then I saw him at the Senior Bowl, and I was like, okay, damn, this guy's good. Like he was truly putting on a show almost every single day at the Senior Bowl, and then he comes here and he tests like an elite athlete, like one of the best wide receiver athletes that the Combine has ever seen overall, with 40, vert, broad, like all this stuff, man. And comes in at 6'4". He's got a little bit of a slender build, but he's got that ability to do so many different things for you. I think he can play as an X, but I also think that you can move him around and he can be pretty comfortable as a player. So I think that he is skyrocketing really in what he was able to do. Another player to highlight, Alec Pierce from Cincinnati.
Dude, his testing numbers were wild.
Nuts. Bruce Feldman, he had his freaks list that he does every year, and Alec Pierce was on there, and he said that he probably has an 11-foot broad and a 40-inch vertical jump. But what did he come here and do? He came here and did exactly that, and he ran in the 4.3s for the 40-yard dash as well. So he showed that he was a really great athlete. But Alec Pierce is interesting because I thought he would show that more at the Senior Bowl. Like, I read that he was a really good athlete, and I'm like, okay, I'm about to watch this guy really dominate athletically, whether it was stacking and getting vertical or going up and getting jump balls and just really making a difference in that regard. And he didn't. And he just, I came away from the Senior Bowl like, man, I was kind of disappointed. I thought I was going to go away thinking like Alec Pierce, he's the man. He's my mid-round wide receiver that I want. And I still think that he's probably a mid-round wide receiver, especially for how he tested here at the Combine. But he was just a player who, I'm glad that he had these testing numbers, certainly for his own stock. I think he puts himself back in kind of that late day 2 maybe range, maybe early day 3, but I still think he's probably something around a 3rd-round pick. So those are 2 guys that I was pretty impressed with that weren't like in my top 5s going in.
Kind of put you on the spot to a certain degree here.
Great, love it.
Let's talk about the Ohio State receivers.
Okay.
So we talked about Olave. Okay, he didn't run the 4.26, which again would have made him the best wide receiver prospect of all time.
Right.
When you look at, we've had this conversation. I think I'm on the pod once, but privately a lot actually. It's just like looking at, you're watching all these plays from Ohio State, and you're seeing these 2 great receivers on the field play the receiver position almost completely different. Yeah. With Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. Like, again, going back to like this aesthetic thing, which is the type of guy that you want? Because I do think I'm probably a little higher on Olave, but they're both like really good. Yeah. And it's really a preference thing, I think.
Yeah. I mean, they're both right there, and somebody whose testing numbers really impressed me were Garrett Wilson's. I mean, him breaking 4.4 is
I was like,
important.
that's major.
Because you talking about them being different styles. Chris Olave is such a smooth, deep threat wide receiver, and then Garrett Wilson was more of this guy who could do more for you in short area stuff. Really flip the hips, really turn on a dime, really put his foot in the ground and kind of change direction. And so those 2 different styles. I would say that I probably gravitate more towards what Garrett Wilson is. I had him I think I had him 1 ranking ahead of Chris Olave going into the week, and I think it's just because when you are really good at changing direction, when you are so explosive in short area, you have that separation ability, right? And I think that is really important for quarterbacks, and it helps your offense to be a little bit more quarterback friendly, I guess, if you can create that separation. But yeah, I mean, Wilson really impressed me with the 40-yard dash. That's something that I'm like, man, I guess I can't really question the speed too much anymore. Maybe it's just like he's turning it on and off for whatever route he's running and something like that. And obviously they have Jackson Smith and Jigba as well. So maybe like they just wanted them to go deep more than they wanted Garrett Wilson to go deep. And maybe that was just the case there. But I think that he really rounded out his game, showed that he can play really well.
And that was one of the things I was talking with an old colleague of mine, Doug Lemarisse, who works for Cleveland.com about that. And, they've obviously been having these conversations at Ohio State for the last 3-4 seasons, right, about the differences and similarities between these guys. And one of the things that I pointed out with Olave is, like, in a lot of ways, his athletic profile almost escapes you when you watch him. Yes. Because he's always out to the field. He's always running these out-breaking routes. It's along the sideline. And what I was saying is, like, if you're just going to evaluate him off of that, it's extremely impressive because it's just hard in the college game to get open that far away from the quarterback, right? There's a lot of space to take care of, right? The corners can play so far off if they want. You can roll the safety over the top and try to eliminate a whole thing. A lot of things happening out to the field. So I think, like, to your point about difference in play styles and how smooth Chris is, like the pacing, the tempo of the routes, his ability to be smooth and kind of get to top speed without it necessarily looking like he's straining. That's one of the more impressive things about him. So, and you use that in comparison to a Garrett Wilson, who, to your point, is a lot more sudden, more right now movements, a little bit more in short area quickness, I think is his best use. And then we get these tests and it's like, well, you guys are basically neck and neck with a lot of these things, right? So trying to suss out, like, what that means for them in different contexts, because I don't know if Garrett Wilson will always be like this boundary X-style receiver in the NFL. I think that he might be better used, kind of moved around the way that we see like a Cooper Kupp be used, where you can get him in space, get him in these one-on-one scenarios, get him on drags, get him on choice routes, or you can get him the ball in areas where he can use that suddenness, and try to get away from wide receiver or get away from defensive backs. And then with Olave, it's like, maybe you do want to move him around as well, but when you watch him against the press, you can tell that he has a plan. He can make it work, and I've learned to shut up because I had my concerns about Devontae Smith going into his senior year, and it was like, oh no, he's just actually unguardable,
Right.
And this might be the same kind of deal with Chris. So like, for you saying that you have them kind of like one ranking apart, what is the best case scenarios for both of those guys in terms of roles for you?
Let me interject for a second and remind you guys that the Too High podcast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow. Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF.
That was everything I wanted it to be. That was truly sitting here getting to experience that in person.
We got one more.
We still got a Manscaped on the way. So
no, okay. So to answer your question, with Garrett, it's kind of interesting because I think that you're right. He has a profile that you would think is more of like an excess kind of wide receiver, but I do like him moving a little bit more, and especially with how good he can be with short area stuff. I'd like to see him be in the slot a decent amount. I'd like to see what happens when you give him space, right? And I think that Ohio State does a good job of that anyways, right? That I feels like Ohio State, they didn't start this. I'm probably going to out myself as an idiot, but when we talk about like mesh concepts and just like all that, like Ohio State just runs so much
nobody's
of that
better at it than
with
they are.
such great athletes. And so Garrett Wilson was just another person who I think that he was able to show what he could do in space when he was running those kinds of routes and in those kinds of concepts. And so things like that, they could give him a decent amount, because he's a lighter guy, right? He showed up, he was sub 6 foot, and he was 183 pounds. So it's like, okay, you've got the game of an X, but you don't really have the size. Can you hold up as an X? And so with that, it kind of tells me that let's move him around a little bit. He came in with long arms, big hands, so that catch radius is still there. And then when you see the speed, that makes me think that you can get creative with him. Olave, man, I love him as an intermediate and a deep threat.
Right.
You mentioned nobody makes it that smooth. The steps, the wasted movements, there's none of the wasted movements in there with Olave. And like you said, it's sneaky, right? I mean, like, he gets off a press, and it's almost like he gets even with defensive backs, and they think, oh, I got this guy. And it's like, wait a second.
Where did these 10 yards of separation come
from? And so I think that that's kind of how you unlock of what he's able to do if you continue to get him with a good, deep-armed passer.
Right.
Olave's going to be able to set a lot of stuff up in front of him, the short and intermediate parts of the field, because he's going to be such a great deep threat for you.
I'll add, for the third time now, saying the exact same thing, that Garrett Wilson probably needs to be moved around more. Just because like the press stuff worries me a little bit.
Yeah.
Like you said, he's not the heaviest player at this position, and like you don't want him to have to play against a press corner all the time.
And I think Cleveland's a good spot for them, right? Especially if they lose Jarvis, right?
Play action game. You get him in these tight splits where you got to play off, and he can break. Get these in-breaking routes and things like that. That would be a great.
One of the things that I remember when I'm watching the Vikings this year was whenever they would get into either heavier personnel groupings or 11 personnel, but like heavier formations or whatever.
Like that,
what you end up getting is Jefferson and Thielen with off corners.
Yeah.
Even though they were playing wideouts, you get off corners because of how defenses are set up to defend against a lot of people in the box. And it's like that's the kind of system you'd want to put Wilson in. Because yes, he should be moved around. He can probably play in the slot, but if you're going to play him out wide, hey, let's get him into a system, like you said, like with Cleveland.
Yep.
Like with the Vikings. Obviously, the Vikings aren't going to take him, but like with the Vikings, where you can still use him outside, but don't get the press looks, and now you can let him cook in space like that. And I think that would be that'd be really interesting for him.
And if the Chargers lose Mike Williams in free agency, if Olave goes to the Chargers,
they have to have those guys very high on their list.
That's got to be That's got to be a good spot too.
This is another question that I've been thinking about this whole week is the Chargers, because I'm really like not mad where they go in the draft. Everyone's saying, okay, Jordan Davis is the perfect fit for them.
Yeah.
They take Jordan Davis, I think that's great.
Right.
If they take a corner, I'm like, great.
Yeah.
If they take a receiver, I'm like, great. If they take someone to play on the bad side of their offensive line, I'm like, great. Where do you feel about the Chargers right now?
I think, the sport's too high brand, being able to play in a too high world, having Jordan Davis makes a ton of sense for them because, to quote you guys, it changes the math, right? And that's something where if you allow him to just be an absolute redwood tree straight in the middle of that defense, then that helps you everywhere. It helps the rest of that defensive line. It helps Joey Bosa. It helps some of the like faster defensive linemen that they have that I feel like are struggling a little bit. Like Jerry Tillery is one who I watched Jerry Tillery at Notre Dame, and I'm like, okay, I like Jerry Tillery, and now it's kind of like he's getting swallowed up, like he's getting lost a little bit in the NFL. And I feel like when you get a big-bodied, true strength anchor in the middle, it helps all of those guys out as well as the secondary. So I think Jordan Davis is probably the ideal pick for them. But like you mentioned, they need a corner, they need a wide receiver. Those would all be great picks as well.
I'm with you.
That's like the tier 1 group of receivers we talked about. Any guys, I know you're talking about Watson from North Dakota State. It's very loud in here right now.
It is.
I can't even hear myself think.
Right.
Okay. After that kind of tier 1 group-ish, maybe later round.
31 reps.
Maybe
31 reps.
31 reps. Where's the tier 2, tier 3 type guys that you're into?
I'll see some guys that are a little bit lower. Look, I know that Wan'Dale Robinson's got super short arms, but I like his game. I like his speed. I like what he can bring from that profile. Same thing with Calvin Austin. I think that again, you can't really teach that speed element of their game. I think they're fantastic in that regard. Sky Moore is another guy who, when we talk about a guy who could stop and start, I was super disappointed in his agility drills because I thought he was going to be fantastic.
100%.
Off press, he looks like he would hit those
he looks
drills.
like it's like you watch him in game and he's flipping hips quick. He's putting the foot in the ground. He's changing direction. I'm like, this dude's about to kill the 3-cone.
Mac cornerbacks.
Okay, I guess so. But those are some guys that bring a speed profile that I'm very intrigued in. And we obviously talk a lot about big slot players and things that are coming around in the NFL that we're emphasizing a lot in that regard, but there is still a need to get those speed players in. Those I don't want to call them gadget players because I feel like that can mean anything from team to team, but just those speed element guys. I think that Calvin Austin's probably the top of that group of speed players that I'd like to get on.
For me, the issue is always going to be the same as where you pick these guys.
Yes.
Because taking Kadarius Toney in the first round, taking Tavon Austin in the first round, that's a problem.
Right.
But you want to go and get Calvin Austin in the 3rd round?
Right.
No problem with that.
Right.
100%.
I have absolutely no problem. You know what I don't have a problem with either?
Yeah, this is good. That was good.
I'm excited to announce today Manscapes.
Don't lean closer to me when you make this ad, please.
I'm going to bring the
directly
chair.
in the eyes.
Today, I'm excited to announce Manscaped. Look at me.
No, I won't. I won't do it.
Today, I'm excited to announce Manscaped launched their Ultra Premium collection. Believe it or not, it's for your not so private parts. I'm talking about a leveled up hygiene routine with your favorite manly scent. This is an all-in-one skin and hair care kit for the everyday man. It covers you from head to toe, literally. Manscaped is trusted below the waist. Now trust them with the rest. Join the 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off and free shipping with the promo code PFF. You get the Manscaped body wash, the 2-in-1 shampoo and conditioner, the hydrating body moisturizer, the Manscaped deodorant, and the Manscaped lip balm. Getting dressed after is optional. Wear one great scent all day long. Get 20% off and free shipping with promo code PFF at manscaped.com. There's 20% off and free shipping with the promo code PFF at manscaped.com.
With the promo code 31. 31
Yeah,
reps.
31 reps.
With the promo code 30 minus 1 rep at the. Okay, let's finish off with just like, regardless of position, who are the Trevor Sikkema guys this year?
Well, I'll give a shout out to some guys that I was really impressed with this week. I was super impressed with Kayvon Thibodeau, man.
Right.
He just spoke at the podium not too long ago before we were recording this podcast, and they asked him the questions about whether he loves football, the narratives of that being out there, and I just felt like he handled all those questions so well. He talked about his love for the game and how much he sacrificed to get here, and he said that teams don't really question that, but he knows it's a media narrative, and he understands that the media is going to do what they're going to do, but he talked about putting his head down and just making sure that his mind is focused on the right things, and his mind is focused on the right things,
right.
man. I mean, when the football questions came around, he was so smart. He's an avid chess player, and he talked about how he correlates the game of chess to pass rushing, and he talked about like setting up different moves, and he talked about initially he's like, I'm always going to start with speed, and I'm going to do a couple of different speed moves to you during the first couple of quarters of the game, and then I'm going to come back, I'm going to hit you with power, I'm going to hit you with different moves, and he was so detailed in what he was able to do, and he was laying out his moves, his counters, his plans, his everything, and like that's a guy who gets the most out of his talent, right? We see so many people come through this combine who have all the talent in the world, who blow up the athletic testing, who just like have so many of these athletic gifts, but sometimes they just don't necessarily know what to do with it. Kayvon feels like that guy that has the rare ability that also understands what to do with it. And I think that, man, I think he's going to be an unbelievable pro. He's my top edge rusher. He was already coming into the week. And look, the Jaguars want to take him number one
Listen
overall.
to the Hutch podcast.
Okay. Hutchinson was great as well, man. I mean, he had just as big of a crowd as Kayvon Thibodeau did, and it's splitting hairs between these dudes.
I think so.
They each bring something to the table that NFL teams are going to love. And whether it's KT at number 1 and Hutch at number 2, or maybe it's Hutch at number 1, KT at number 2, some form of fashion of that, these dudes are both going top 5. These dudes are both going to be fantastic, and we already know that's the case.
100%. I'm making an assumption that this is a Sikkema guy based on where he played college football at. So my question is, how much of a nutcase am I for considering Kaiir Elam to be closer to Gardner and Stingley than McCreary, McDuffie, and kind of that next tier?
So I mean, you're right, man. We've got the corners running later this week, and I remember you talking about this leading up to the combine, man. If he breaks 4.5s, then all of a sudden we're talking about a guy who has the mentality, the length, the size, the ability to play man coverage, to play in the press, and be very comfortable in that area. He had a handful of reps against Jameson Williams doing that he played pretty well when he played in that Alabama game, which is great. I mean, he's a little grabby, right? I mean, like, that's something that you got to be careful with, because you don't want him committing all these penalties.
You should see me playing at 33 years of age.
You
should see me playing corner in my flag football league.
Gasping, just
Legion of Boom coverage. I can't call pass interference on every snap.
You're the Cam Chancellor, right? You're absolutely bodying people over the middle in flag football, setting the tone. No, but look, I think that Kaiir Elam is the forgotten man in this cornerback class. I think we went into the year with those way too early mock drafts, and Kaiir Elam was firmly in the top 10. And then, obviously, Derek Stingley's involved. Sauce Gardner popped up. Trent McDuffie's been fantastic. Andrew Booth's got great ball skills, right? Yes. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, well, we want to put these guys in the top 5 of the cornerback ranking. And all of a sudden, like, Kaiir Elam's just getting bumped down and bumped down and bumped down. And I do think that if he tests super well, I'm right there with you. He's in that group. He is in that tier 1, tier 2 group of corners, however big your tiers are. But he's a guy who can be really great for you, especially if you want to be a man coverage team, be able to play single high on the back end. He's going to be a great guy for you to get.
Okay, and then finishing off with the kind of flip side of this question, who do you literally hate? Who do you fucking, you're like, put on the tape and you're like, I'm gonna kill this guy. I fucking hate. Okay, that's it.
Nope.
All right, this was the Too High podcast. Trevor, thank you for coming on. Always a pleasure talking to you.
This is fantastic. Obviously, getting to link up with you guys in person is always great. You do such a great job covering so many different areas of the game that, I mean, you guys make the complicated game of football so easy to digest and understand. And y'all really, this is one of my favorite podcasts, so I appreciate you guys having me on.
Well, plug your podcast.
Yeah,
you have a new podcast.
NFL Stock Exchange. You guys
go.
are in the NFL draft. Myself and Connor Rogers, we're talking about draft prospects. We're having a lot of fun on there as well. So after you listen to the Too High podcast every day, go listen to NFL Stock Exchange.
And as you can see, Trevor's so good at his job now that we don't have enough time to play Call of Duty together, which is the biggest shame.
We'll get into it. I recently picked up the controller for the first time in a couple of months again because it's draft season, so you don't normally get that time. And I played a couple of rounds of Warzone, and I'm like, God, I kind of can't wait till May so I can just log on all the time. So we'll have to get that.
100%.